They argued for another hour, there in that underground room with Harrison's final creation sitting between them. Gregory helped mediate, finding middle ground when tensions rose. Slowly, painfully, a framework emerged, a foundation with a board of 7 people: Victoria, Daniel, Maya, Gregory, and 3 independent experts in AI ethics, disability rights, and education. Victoria would provide initial funding and business infrastructure. Daniel would manage day-to-day operations. Maya would have veto power over any use of the algorithm that deviated from helping underserved populations. Gregory would handle security and prevent corporate espionage. All decisions would require majority board approval. It's not perfect, Maya admitted, but it's better than any one of us having total control. Uncle Harrison would approve, Daniel said. He always believed in collaborative approaches to complex problems. Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my lawyers." "We'll draw up the paperwork tonight. Make this official before anyone changes their mind." While she made calls, stepping away to speak in sharp, efficient tones, Maya sat on the floor of the underground room, exhausted. Daniel sat next to her. "You did it," he said quietly. "You solved all his puzzles, found what he hid, and you're about to change millions of lives." "We did it," Maya corrected. "I couldn't have gotten here without you. Without any of you, really, even Victoria in her own complicated way. What will you do now? After all this?" Maya hadn't let herself think that far ahead. "I don't know. I guess I need to figure out where to live, how to finish school. All the normal things I've been avoiding by chasing puzzles." "The foundation will pay board members," Daniel said. "Not a fortune, but enough to live on. You could get your own apartment, finish school on your own terms, actually have some stability for once." Stability. The word felt foreign and wonderful at the same time. "That sounds good, really good." Gregory joined them, sitting cross-legged on the floor. "You know, Harrison's puzzles weren't just about intelligence. They were about character. Anyone could have found that piano, but you're the one who saw the possibilities instead of just an old piece of furniture. You could have taken Victoria's initial offer of $5 million and disappeared, but you insisted on conditions that would help others. That's who you are." Maya felt tears threatening but pushed them back. She'd spent so long being strong, being independent, that accepting kindness still felt dangerous somehow. Victoria returned, her phone call finished. "Lawyers will have documents ready by morning. In the meantime, we should secure the algorithm. My team is waiting outside. They'll transport the hard drive to a secure facility." "No," Maya said firmly. "Not yet. First, we all agree on storage protocols. Nobody gets sole physical custody until the foundation is legally established." Victoria looked like she wanted to argue, but then nodded reluctantly. "Fair enough. We'll use a bank vault, require all 4 of us to access it. Paranoid, but I can work with paranoid." They emerged from the underground room as dawn was breaking over San Francisco. Maya was filthy, exhausted, and completely drained, but she'd done it. They'd done it. Victoria's security team took custody of the hard drive under strict protocols. Legal documents would be drafted. The foundation would be established. Harrison Blackwell's final gift to the world would be protected and used responsibly. But as they were leaving the mansion, Victoria pulled Maya aside. "I need to say something. You were right earlier about why Harrison didn't leave this to me. I've spent so long focused on business, on profit margins and market share, that I forgot why he started the company in the first place. He wanted to help people, make technology accessible. I let that get buried under quarterly earnings reports." Maya didn't know what to say. Victoria had been an antagonist for so much of their journey. Seeing her vulnerable was unsettling. "I'm not saying I'm suddenly a different person," Victoria continued. "I'm still going to push for sustainable business practices, for proper funding structures. But I'm willing to listen now, to remember that profit isn't the only measure of success." "Thank you," Maya said, "for being willing to compromise." Victoria smiled slightly. "Don't thank me yet. We're going to fight about every decision the foundation makes, but at least we'll be fighting for something worthwhile." Over the next 3 days, lawyers worked overtime to establish the Blackwell Foundation. Papers were signed, accounts were opened, board members were recruited. Maya found herself in meetings with people she'd only read about, experts in fields she barely understood, all discussing how to responsibly deploy an AI algorithm that could change the world. It was overwhelming and terrifying, and exactly what she'd been working toward without knowing it. Maya worked with intense focus, the others watching silently. She'd dealt with pressure her whole life, but this was different. Everything came down to the next hour. One mistake, one miscalculation, and they'd be locked out for 24 hours. Victoria would probably take that time to bring in her own experts, cut Maya and the others out entirely. The mathematics were complex but elegant. Harrison had designed the puzzle to be solvable only by someone who understood everything that came before. The prime number sequence from the first piano, the astronomical calculations from Chicago, the harmonic relationships from Seattle, even the color theory from Miami played a role, as each instrument needed to be played at specific dynamics that corresponded to light wavelengths. Got it, Maya said finally. She'd written out detailed instructions for each of the three parts. Daniel, you're on violin. Victoria, you'll take the electronic device. I'll handle the keyboard. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You're trusting me with a critical component? You're the one who wanted in, Maya said. Besides, your part requires precise timing but not creativity. It's basically following orders, which I assume you're good at given your corporate background. A flash of annoyance crossed Victoria's face, but she moved to her assigned instrument. Daniel took his position at the violin, checking the tuning. Maya stood at the keyboard, her heart racing. Wait, Gregory said. What about me? Harrison said 3 people were needed. 3 people to solve, Maya corrected. 3 to play. You're our insurance. If something goes wrong, you need to remember everything we did so we can try again. Gregory nodded, pulling out his phone to record. On my count, Maya said. Remember, the spaces between notes are as important as the notes themselves. Don't rush, don't hesitate. Trust the math. She counted down from 3. On 1 they began. The music that emerged was unlike anything Maya had ever heard. It was fragmented yet whole, discordant yet harmonious. Each instrument played its part independently, but together they created something greater. The silence between notes rang with meaning, the pauses forming melodies in the negative space. Maya lost herself in the playing, her fingers finding keys automatically while her mind tracked the complex timing. She could hear Daniel's violin weaving through her keyboard lines. Victoria's electronic device added strange, otherworldly tones that somehow tied everything together. They played for 7 minutes. When the final note faded, Maya held her breath. Nothing happened. Did it work? Victoria asked, breaking the silence. Then the floor began to move. The 3 pedestals sank into the ground, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Success. They descended carefully, flashlights illuminating stone steps that looked far older than the house above. At the bottom, they found a small room that seemed to exist outside of time. The walls were lined with servers, still humming with power. In the center stood a glass case containing a single hard drive, and next to it, a screen flickered to life. Harrison Blackwell appeared one final time, but this video was different. He looked directly at the camera with an intensity that made Maya feel like he could see her across time and death. Congratulations, he said. You've made it to the end. By now you've probably formed alliances, made compromises, maybe even discovered things about yourself you didn't know. That's what this was really about. Not just finding someone smart enough to solve puzzles, but finding people who could work together, despite their differences. He gestured to the hard drive. Inside this device is my life's final work, an AI algorithm that understands context, emotion, nuance. It can help disabled people communicate, translate complex ideas into simple terms, assist with mental health treatment, revolutionize education. In short, it can make technology truly accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy and educated. Harrison's expression grew serious, but it could also be weaponized, used for surveillance, manipulation, creating deep fakes that destroy lives, sold to the highest bidder, and locked behind paywalls that exclude the people who need it most. I couldn't prevent that while alive, so I hid it, hoping someone worthy would find it after I was gone. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was tired. I don't have the right to dictate what you do with this. I'm dead. This is your world now, not mine. But I'm asking you to think carefully. Whatever you decide, make sure it's for the right reasons. The video ended. The room fell silent except for the humming of servers. Victoria moved toward the glass case. Well, here we are. The moment of truth. Wait, Maya said. We need to talk about this. Talk about what? It's right there. We take it, we leave, we figure out next steps. The next steps are what we need to agree on now, Daniel interjected. Before anyone touches that drive. Uncle Harrison was right. This is too powerful to just hand over to whoever can grab it first. Victoria's jaw tightened. I run his company. I have the resources to actually do something with this algorithm. You have what? Good intentions and empty pockets? We have the moral authority, Maya said quietly. We're the ones who solved his puzzles. We're the ones he chose in a way. He didn't choose anyone. He died before seeing who'd find his treasure hunt. Don't pretend this is some sacred calling. Victoria crossed her arms. I'm willing to compromise. I'll fund development, ensure it gets used properly. But I'm not handing billions of dollars of intellectual property to a teenager and a washed-up trust fund kid. Daniel flinched at that description but kept his voice level. And I'm not letting you turn Uncle Harrison's final gift to the world into another profit center for Blackwell Technologies. He left the company for a reason, Victoria. He didn't trust any of you. He didn't trust me? Victoria's composure cracked. I spent 15 years keeping his company alive while he played hermit in this mansion. I protected his legacy, maintained his staff, kept his research going. And what did I get? Nothing. Not in his will, not in his plans, nothing. Just distant relatives fighting over scraps while I actually did the work. The raw pain in her voice surprised Maya. For the first time, she saw Victoria as more than just an obstacle. She was someone who dedicated her life to Harrison's vision and felt betrayed by his final act of hiding everything away. Maybe that's why he didn't leave it to you, Maya said carefully. Not because you weren't loyal or smart, but because he knew you'd approach it like a business asset instead of like something that could change people's lives. Those are the same thing, Victoria exploded. You think changing lives doesn't require money, resources, infrastructure? You think good intentions alone make technology accessible? I've seen dozens of brilliant inventions die because naive idealists couldn't figure out basic business logistics. She has a point, Gregory said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. I've been thinking about this the whole trip. Maya, you solved the puzzles. Yeah. But then what? You're 17, about to age out of foster care, with no money and no support system. Even if you had the algorithm, what would you actually do with it? Maya felt like she'd been slapped. I'd find a way. There are people who could help. Organizations, which all need funding, Gregory interrupted gently. Which need lawyers, developers, security. This isn't a fairy tale where the orphan girl gets the treasure and everything works out magically. This is real, and reality requires resources that none of us have except Victoria. So what, we just hand it over? Daniel demanded. Let her. Sell it to tech giants and pretend Uncle Harrison would have wanted that. I'm not suggesting that either, Gregory said. I'm saying maybe the answer isn't one person or one company owning this. Maybe it needs to be bigger than any of us. Maya's mind was racing. She thought about all the foster kids she'd known over the years. Kids who struggled in school not because they weren't smart, but because the system wasn't designed for their learning style. Kids who couldn't communicate with their families because they didn't speak the same language. Kids like her, brilliant but invisible because no one with power cared enough to look. A foundation, she said suddenly. We create a foundation to house the algorithm, not controlled by any one person or company but by a board. Victoria provides the resources and business expertise. Daniel represents the family legacy. And I. She faltered. You ensure it stays true to Harrison's vision. Daniel finished. You're the one who solved the puzzles. You're the one who understood what he really wanted. Victoria was quiet, thinking. A foundation could work. Tax benefits, public goodwill, more freedom to pursue long-term projects instead of quarterly profits. But I want guarantees, legal documents, real oversight, not just symbolic positions. And I want guarantees that it actually helps people who need it, Maya countered. Free access for schools, hospitals, disability services. No locking it behind premium features that only rich people can afford. That's not sustainable long-term, then make it sustainable. That's why we need your business expertise. They argued for another hour, there in that underground room with Harrison's final creation sitting between them. Gregory helped mediate, finding middle ground when tensions rose. Slowly, painfully, a framework emerged. A foundation with a board of 7 people: Victoria, Daniel, Maya, Gregory, and 3 independent experts in AI ethics, disability rights, and education. The Chicago puzzle nearly broke them. Harrison's old research facility had been converted into a co-working space years ago, but the building's bones were still the same. The clue led them to what had once been Harrison's private laboratory, now divided into small office rentals. They had to wait until midnight to break in without attracting attention. Maya discovered the puzzle hidden in an old observatory dome on the building's roof, a space that hadn't been renovated because no one had figured out what to do with it. The dome still opened, revealing a surprisingly clear view of the night sky despite the city's light pollution. Inside, Harrison had left behind a complex star chart with musical notations overlaid on constellation patterns. "This is insane," Gregory muttered, watching Maya photograph everything. "He wants us to connect astronomy to music? How is that even possible?" But Maya was already seeing it. The notes corresponded to specific stars based on their brightness, and the constellations formed patterns that, when translated into musical sequences, created another melody. It took her 3 nights of work, cross-referencing astronomical data from when Harrison had worked in this building, accounting for how the stars had shifted position over the years. Daniel helped where he could, but mostly he watched Maya work with something like awe. She'd spread papers across the observatory floor, covered them with calculations and diagrams, barely eating or sleeping. On the 3rd night, when she finally cracked it and the melody revealed another hidden compartment behind the star chart, Daniel applauded softly. "You're incredible, you know that?" he said. Maya looked up from the USB drive she'd just found, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "I'm just doing what your uncle wanted, seeing patterns." "No," Daniel said seriously. "Most people, even smart people, would have given up by now. This would have seemed impossible. But you just keep going." "Where'd you learn that?" Maya thought about the 12 different schools she'd attended, the constant moving, the nights she'd spent in unfamiliar rooms trying to make sense of a world that never stayed still long enough to understand. When your whole life is unstable, you learn to hold on to the things that make sense. Math makes sense. Music makes sense. Puzzles have answers, even when nothing else does. Daniel nodded slowly. Uncle Harrison used to say something similar. After his wife and daughter died, he threw himself into his work because it was the only thing that still followed rules. People are unpredictable, messy, but code does exactly what you tell it to. They drove to Seattle next, following the coordinates from the Chicago Drive. The city was gray with constant drizzle, and Harrison's property there turned out to be a private art gallery he'd established years ago to showcase works by unknown artists. The building was still operational, run by a foundation, which meant they couldn't just break in. Gregory handled this part, using Daniel's family connections to arrange a private viewing. They told the gallery director they were researching Harrison's philanthropic work for a documentary. It wasn't entirely a lie. The puzzle was hidden in the artwork itself. 17 paintings that Harrison had personally commissioned, each containing hidden elements that, when viewed in the right order and the right lighting, revealed pieces of a cipher. Maya spent hours studying each painting, taking notes on colors, brushstrokes, subject matter. The cipher itself was based on color theory and how different hues related to musical notes. It was brilliant and infuriating in equal measure. Maya found herself actually angry at Harrison at one point, frustrated by how complex he'd made everything. "Why couldn't he just leave a normal password?" she complained to Daniel. "Because anyone can crack a password given enough time," Daniel replied. They were sitting in a coffee shop near the gallery, taking a break. Uncle Harrison wanted someone who'd appreciate the journey, not just the destination, someone who'd understand why he hid what he hid. "Did you know him well?" Maya asked. She realized they'd been working together for 2 weeks now, and she still knew very little about Daniel beyond the basics. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Better than most of the family, but not as well as I wish I had. He was my mom's older brother. She died when I was 12, and after that, Uncle Harrison kind of took over as the closest thing I had to a parent. My dad remarried quickly, started a new family. I was just a reminder of what he'd lost, I think. I'm sorry, Maya said, and meant it. It's okay. It was a long time ago, but Uncle Harrison never made me feel like I was in the way. He let me hang around his lab, taught me to code, actually listened when I talked. The rest of the family saw me as the screw-up nephew who'd never amount to anything, but he saw potential. Daniel paused. What about you? You've never really told us your story. Maya had been avoiding this question. Not much to tell. My parents died when I was 6. Car accident. No other family, so I went into foster care. Been bouncing around ever since. That must have been hard. It was what it was, Maya said, her standard response. But then, surprising herself, she continued. The worst part wasn't the moving, really. It was never knowing how long I'd stay anywhere. I'd start to make friends, start to feel comfortable, and then something would happen and I'd have to leave. After a while, you stop trying to connect with people because you know it won't last. Daniel looked at her with understanding. Is that why you're doing this? The treasure hunt? For the money? Maya had asked herself that question 100 times. At first, yeah. I thought it was about security, about never having to worry about having a place to live or money for food. But now, she struggled to find the words. Now it's more about proving something. Your uncle could have left his fortune to anyone. Instead, he created this whole elaborate test. He wanted to find someone specific, someone who thought like him. And somehow I'm the one who found the first clue. That has to mean something, right? Before Daniel could answer, Gregory appeared, looking stressed. We have a problem. They followed him outside where he showed them his phone. Someone had posted photos on a tech forum, photos of the star chart from Chicago, taken from an angle that meant someone else had been in the observatory. The post asked if anyone knew what the symbols meant, suggesting they might be related to Harrison Blackwell's rumored hidden fortune. How did someone else get those photos? Maya felt sick. We were careful. We didn't tell anyone. Family, Daniel said grimly. It has to be. Someone's been following us, maybe tracking my phone or credit cards. I should have thought of that. So what do we do? Maya asked. We move faster, Gregory said. Whatever head start we had is gone now. If other people are working on the same clues, it becomes a race. They solved the Seattle puzzle that night, working frantically, barely stopping to rest. The hidden compartment behind a painting revealed not just another USB drive, but also a warning letter from Harrison. By now you may have noticed others pursuing the same goal. He'd written, Remember what I said about trust. The algorithm I've hidden is powerful. In the right hands it could help millions. In the wrong hands it could be weaponized or sold to the highest bidder. Choose your allies carefully. The next location was Miami, Harrison's waterfront property where he'd spent his final years. They flew there on Daniel's credit card, arriving exhausted and anxious. The house was massive, right on the beach and supposedly empty except for minimal security. They surveilled it for a day, planning their approach. That's when Maya spotted the black SUV. It had been parked in the same spot for hours, 2 people visible in the front seats, watching the house. We're not alone, she told Daniel. They watched the SUV for another hour from their hotel room across the street. The vehicle never moved. Professional surveillance, Gregory noted. This wasn't just family members stumbling onto their trail. Someone knew exactly what they were looking for. We need to abort, Gregory said. Come back when it's safer. There is no safer, Maya argued. Every day we wait, more people figure out the clues. We go tonight. Daniel agreed with her, though he looked worried. They waited until 3 a.m, then approached the Miami house from the beachside, wading through shallow water to avoid the front entrance where the SUV was watching. The house's security was more sophisticated than the previous locations, but Gregory proved surprisingly skilled at disabling alarm systems. Don't ask about my past, he said when he saw their expressions. Inside, the Miami house was eerie. It had been left exactly as Harrison lived in it. Books on shelves, clothes in closets, dishes in the kitchen sink. It felt like walking through a museum of someone's life, preserved at the moment they disappeared from it. The puzzle was in Harrison's private music room, a soundproof space with walls covered in acoustic panels. This one was different from the others. Instead of hidden clues to find, there was a single piano with a complex piece of sheet music sitting on the stand. A note clipped to the music read, "Play this perfectly without a single mistake and the final location will be revealed. You have 3 attempts. After that, the door locks and won't open for 24 hours. Maya's hands shook as she sat at the piano. She'd taught herself music theory, could read sheet music decently, but this piece was at a professional level, concert pianist level. It would take weeks of practice to learn properly, and they didn't have weeks. They might not even have hours if whoever was in that SUV decided to act. "I can't do this," she said, her voice small. "I'm not good enough." Daniel looked at the music over her shoulder. Uncle Harrison wouldn't have made this impossible. There has to be another way to think about it. Maya studied the piece again, really studied it, and then she saw what Harrison had done. The music wasn't just notes on a page. The pattern of the notes, the way they were positioned on the staff, the time signatures, they formed a code. You didn't have to play the piece perfectly. You had to understand what it was saying. It took her 20 minutes to decode it, her fingers flying across her phone's calculator, translating musical notation into numbers, numbers into coordinates. When she finished, she had an address in San Francisco and another sequence of numbers she didn't fully understand yet. "I don't think we need to play it at all," she said. "The music is the message." Daniel laughed with relief. That's so like him. Making us think we needed one skill when really he was testing something else entirely. But they'd taken too long. As they were leaving through the beach entrance, flashlights appeared in the darkness. 3 people approaching fast. Maya's heart jumped into her throat. "Go!" Daniel pushed her toward the water. "Gregory, get her out of here." "I'm not leaving you," Maya protested. "You're the only one who can solve the last puzzle." "Go!" Gregory grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the waves. Maya struggled, looking back to see Daniel facing the approaching figures, his hands raised. She heard voices shouting, demanding answers. But Gregory was stronger than he looked, and Maya couldn't break free. They ran through the surf, shoes soaking, Maya's backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Behind them, she could hear more shouting. She twisted around one more time and saw Daniel being grabbed, held by 2 large men while a woman in a business suit stood in front of him, clearly in charge. "Daniel!" Maya screamed. But Gregory had her now, dragging her up the beach toward their rental car. "He'll be fine," Gregory gasped as they ran. "They won't hurt him.
He's family."
They just want information." They drove for an hour, switching cars twice using a technique Gregory knew that Maya didn't ask about. Finally, they stopped at a cheap motel far from Miami, paying cash for a room. Maya was shaking, adrenaline still coursing through her system. "Who were those people?" she demanded. "Blackwell family, I'd guess," Gregory said. "Or corporate competitors. Could be anyone who's heard rumors about what Harrison hid. We have to go back for Daniel." "And do what? Get caught too?" Gregory shook his head. Daniel knew the risks. He made a choice. Now we have to make ours. Maya paced the tiny motel room, her mind racing. Everything felt wrong suddenly. The whole adventure that had seemed exciting and romantic now felt dangerous and real. Daniel could be in serious trouble because of her, because she'd insisted they push forward. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered hesitantly. "Maya?" It was Daniel's voice, strained but calm. "Don't come back for me. I'm okay. They're just talking. But listen carefully, these people are serious. The woman is Victoria Blackwell, my cousin. She runs Uncle Harrison's company now, or what's left of it. She's been searching for the algorithm since he died. She knows about you." "How?" "They've been tracking my movements just like we thought. But it's worse than that. They have resources we can't match. Corporate investigators, hackers, lawyers. Maya, if she catches you, she'll make you give up everything you've learned, and she won't offer you anything in return." Maya swallowed hard. What do they want? What everyone wants. The algorithm. Uncle Harrison's final creation. Victoria thinks it's worth billions, and she's probably right. She's offering me money to tell her everything I know to bring you in. A lot of money. Maya's blood went cold. "Are you going to?" There was a long pause. Then Daniel laughed, though it sounded forced. "Are you kidding?" "And miss the chance to see this through? To finally finish something Uncle Harrison started? No way, but you need to be careful. Go to San Francisco. Solve the last puzzle, and Maya, whatever you find, make sure it's used the right way. Don't let people like Victoria turn it into just another profit machine." The line went dead. Maya looked at Gregory, who'd been listening to the whole conversation. "What now?" Gregory sat on the bed, running his hands through his hair. "Now we make a choice. We could walk away, take what we know, sell it to Victoria or another family member, make some quick money and disappear. Or we could go to San Francisco and risk everything to finish what we started. Why are you even here? Maya asked suddenly. Daniel told me you're his business partner, but you've never said what kind of business. You can hack security systems. You know, counter-surveillance techniques. Who are you really? Gregory looked at her for a long moment. Someone who made mistakes when he was younger and spent 10 years paying for them. Daniel gave me a legitimate job when no one else would. Helped me rebuild my life. I owe him everything. That's why I'm here. So what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Gregory countered. This is your quest, really. You found the first clue. You've solved every puzzle. Daniel and I are just along for the ride. Maya thought about Harrison Blackwell, dead 6 months now, who'd created this elaborate treasure hunt for someone he'd never met. She thought about Daniel, who'd risked his freedom to buy her time to escape. She thought about all the foster homes she'd lived in, all the times she'd felt powerless and invisible. We finish it, she said. We go to San Francisco, we solve the last puzzle, and we make sure whatever Harrison created actually helps people instead of just making rich people richer. Gregory nodded slowly. Okay then. But we do it smart. No more using Daniel's credit cards. No more phones with GPS. We go dark, move fast, and don't trust anyone. They left Miami at dawn, stopping only to buy burner phones with cash and destroy their old ones. Maya felt like she was in a movie, some thriller where people were being chased by shadowy corporations. Except this was real, and the stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined. The drive to San Francisco took 4 days. They stopped at cheap motels, ate gas station food, and took turns driving. Gregory taught Maya some basic counter-surveillance techniques. How to spot a tail, how to vary your route, how to pay for things without leaving a trail. You're good at this, he said on the 3rd day, after Maya successfully identified a car that had been following them for 20 miles and helped him lose it. I'm good at patterns, Maya said. This is just another pattern. On the 4th night, as they sat in yet another anonymous motel room, Maya pulled out the USB drive from Miami and studied the coordinates again. The San Francisco address pointed to Harrison's primary residence, a mansion in Pacific Heights. But there was something else on the drive too, a video file she hadn't opened yet. She clicked it. Harrison appeared on screen, looking even more tired than in the previous videos. This one was clearly filmed near the end of his life. If you're watching this, you've made it to the final location, he said. By now, you've probably encountered resistance. People who want to take what you found and use it for their own purposes. I'm sorry for that. I'd hoped the puzzles would be challenging enough to keep out anyone without pure intentions, but I know better. Greed is a powerful motivator. He paused, coughing slightly. The final puzzle is different from the others. It's not just about intelligence or pattern recognition. It's about understanding why I did all this in the first place. My algorithm isn't just valuable because of what it can do technically. It's valuable because of what it represents. A different way of thinking about artificial intelligence, one that prioritizes human needs over corporate profits. Harrison leaned closer to the camera, his expression intense. The final location requires 3 people to solve. I designed it that way deliberately. No one person, no matter how brilliant, should have sole control over something this powerful. You need collaborators. You need different perspectives. You need to trust people even when it's hard. The video ended there. Maya stared at the blank screen, her mind churning. 3 people. But Daniel was still being held by his cousin. It was just her and Gregory now. We need Daniel, she said. We can't solve it without him. Gregory looked doubtful. Maya, by now Victoria has probably gotten everything she needs from him. She knows where we're going. If we try to contact Daniel, we'll lead her right to us. Then we lead her to us, Maya said, an idea forming. We make it a race. We get to the mansion first, but we let Daniel know where we are. If Victoria wants to catch us, she has to bring him along because she'll need his help with the puzzle. That's risky. What if she just takes the information and leaves us locked out? She can't. The puzzle requires 3 people working together. Harrison just said so. She can send anyone she wants, but they'd need to understand everything we've learned so far. It would take too long to get them up to speed. She needs Daniel, and she needs us. Gregory thought about it. You're betting a lot on Victoria being logical instead of vindictive. I'm betting that she's smart enough to want what Harrison created more than she wants to. Punish us for getting there. First, Maya pulled out her burner phone. We contact Daniel. Tell him we're going to the San Francisco mansion tomorrow at midnight. We tell him to make sure he's there with whoever's holding him. Then we get there early, scout the location, and prepare for whatever happens. This is either brilliant or completely insane, Gregory said. Maybe both, Maya admitted. But do you have a better idea? They reached San Francisco the next afternoon. The mansion was in one of the city's wealthiest neighborhoods, a massive Victorian house with a perfect view of the bay. Unlike Harrison's other properties, this one showed signs of recent maintenance. Landscapers were working on the garden and through the windows. They could see furniture covered in sheets but no dust or decay. They surveilled from a distance, noting security cameras and a guard at the front gate. Getting in wouldn't be as easy as the previous locations. Maya sent a brief text to Daniel's old number. SF Mansion, midnight, need you there. Trust me. She didn't know if he'd get it or if Victoria would see it first. But there was no turning back now. They spent the evening preparing. Gregory bought supplies with cash, flashlights, tools, bottled water. Maya reviewed everything they'd learned from the previous puzzles, looking for patterns that might give her an advantage in the final location. Harrison had been methodical in his clues. Each puzzle had built on the previous one, teaching them new skills, new ways of thinking. At 11:30, they approached the mansion. The guard was gone from his post, strange but convenient. The front gate was unlocked. Very strange. It's a trap, Gregory whispered. Of course it is, Maya replied, but we don't have a choice. They entered the mansion through the front door, which was also unlocked. Inside, the lights were on. Someone had been here recently. They could smell coffee, see fresh footprints in the dust. Hello, Maya, a voice said from the living room. Maya and Gregory spun around. A woman in her 40s stood there, elegant in a black business suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She had the same sharp eyes as Daniel, the same calculating expression. I'm Victoria Blackwell, she said unnecessarily. I believe you've been expecting me. Behind her, 3 large men stood silently, security. And behind them, hands zip-tied in front of him but otherwise unharmed, stood Daniel. He met Maya's eyes and shrugged apologetically. I got your message, Victoria continued. Very clever, by the way. You knew I couldn't solve the final puzzle without Daniel, so you forced my hand. I respect that. It shows strategic thinking. Where's the part where you try to cut us out? Maya asked, keeping her voice steady despite her pounding heart. Victoria smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. I'm a businesswoman, not a villain from a movie. I want what my uncle created, yes, but I'm also practical. You've solved puzzles that stumped corporate researchers for months. Daniel has family connection and inside knowledge. I have resources and legal authority. We all have something the others need. So you're proposing what exactly? Gregory asked. A temporary alliance. We solve the final puzzle together. We find the algorithm. Then we negotiate who gets what. Victoria gestured to her security team to cut Daniel's zip ties. I'll even let Daniel make the case for whatever charitable nonsense you've been planning. I'm not entirely heartless, but I want a seat at the table when decisions get made. Daniel rubbed his wrists as the ties came off. He walked over to Maya and Gregory. Are you okay? He asked Maya quietly. Better than you, apparently, she replied. They weren't too rough. Victoria just wanted information. I told her enough to make her think she could solve it without you, but not enough that she actually could. He smiled slightly. Learned some things from Uncle Harrison about strategic omissions. Victoria clapped her hands once. Wonderful reunion. Now shall we get to work? I'd rather not spend all night in this drafty house. They moved deeper into the mansion, Victoria's security team following at a distance. The house was even larger inside than it appeared from the outside. Harrison had clearly spent his final years here, and every room reflected his eclectic interests. Books on quantum physics next to musical scores, art from unknown painters beside complex mathematical proofs written on whiteboards. The final puzzle, they discovered, was in Harrison's private study on the 3rd floor. The room was circular with windows all around offering views of San Francisco. In the center stood 3 pedestals arranged in a triangle. On each pedestal was a musical instrument, a violin, a piano keyboard, and what looked like a custom electronic device covered in buttons and dials. On the wall, a screen showed a message. The final melody requires 3 minds working as one. Each instrument controls one aspect of the algorithm's encryption. Play in perfect harmony, or the encryption resets and locks for 24 hours. You have 1 attempt. Maya approached the instruments carefully. Each had sheet music next to it. But the pieces were different from each other. They weren't meant to be played separately. They were parts of the same composition, requiring perfect timing and coordination to work together. "This is impossible," Victoria said, studying the sheet music. "These pieces are at different tempos and different keys. They can't be played simultaneously." But Maya was seeing something else. "They're not supposed to be played as written. Look at the time signatures. They're all prime numbers. Harrison is telling us something." She pulled out her phone, reviewing notes from the previous puzzles. The star chart from Chicago, the color theory from Seattle, the mathematical patterns from the very first piano. Everything had been building to this moment, giving them the tools they'd need. "We don't play them simultaneously," she said slowly, working it through. "We play them in sequence, but the sequence itself creates the harmony. The prime numbers tell us the order. Each person plays their part, counting in prime numbers, and the spaces between our notes create the actual melody." Daniel was nodding, understanding. Like negative space in art, the silence is as important as the sound. "Exactly." Victoria looked skeptical but intrigued. "And you can figure out the exact timing?" "I think so. Give me an hour." Maya told Mrs. Rodriguez she was sick. It was a lie, but a necessary one. She couldn't explain what she'd found. Couldn't risk anyone taking the USB drive away or calling her crazy. So she coughed a few times, complained about a headache, and asked if they could postpone the move by a day or two. Mrs. Rodriguez, who genuinely cared despite being overworked and underpaid, agreed reluctantly. That afternoon, Maya went to the public library. She couldn't risk using the USB drive on just any computer. What if it had tracking software? What if someone could trace where it was plugged in? She needed to be smart about this. At the library, she used one of the public computers, the kind that automatically wiped all data after each session. She also made sure to sit in a corner where the security cameras couldn't see the screen clearly. Her hands were sweating as she inserted the drive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a folder appeared with a single video file labeled, "Begin here." Maya plugged in the library's headphones and clicked play. Harrison Blackwell appeared on screen. He looked thinner than in his old photos. His hair completely gray, but his eyes were sharp and intense. He was sitting in what looked like a home office. Bookshelves filled with technical manuals and musical scores visible behind him. "Hello," he said. And even through the computer speakers, his voice had a warm quality that Maya hadn't expected. "If you're watching this, congratulations. The piano puzzle wasn't easy. Most people would have just seen an old instrument and walked away. But you saw more. You saw the possibility of something hidden." Maya leaned closer to the screen, her heart pounding. "I'm Harrison Blackwell, though you probably already know that. I've spent my life building technology that was supposed to make the world better. Some of it did. Some of it was twisted into something I never intended. Now I'm dying and I have one final creation. An artificial intelligence algorithm that I've spent 15 years perfecting. It's not like other AI. This one understands context, emotion, nuance. It could revolutionize how humans interact with technology, especially people who've been left behind by current systems." He paused, and Maya could see the sadness in his eyes. "But I can't just release it into the world. I've seen what happens when powerful technology falls into the wrong hands. So I've hidden it. Not just physically, but encrypted it across 5 locations, each requiring different skills to access. Mathematics, yes, but also music theory, pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, and something harder to quantify, intuition." Harrison leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. "The coordinates on the USB drive will take you to my estate in upstate New York. In the music room there, you'll find the second puzzle. But I need to warn you. My company is being torn apart by people who want to profit from my work. My relatives are fighting over money they didn't earn. If any of them discover what you're doing, they'll try to stop you. Or worse, use you to get what they want." The video ended with one final message appearing on screen. Coordinates and a melody file. Maya quickly wrote down the coordinates on a piece of paper and saved the melody to her phone before ejecting the USB drive. She sat back in the chair, her mind racing. This was real. This was actually happening. A dying billionaire had created a treasure hunt and somehow she'd stumbled onto it. But there was a problem. The coordinates pointed to a place 300 miles away. Maya had exactly $247 in her bank account. Money she'd saved over months of working at the coffee shop. She didn't have a car. She didn't have anyone she could ask for help. She did have a bus ticket's worth of money, though that night Maya packed a small backpack with clothes, her phone charger, the USB drive, and every bit of cash she had. She left a note for Mrs. Rodriguez saying she needed a few days to clear her head and would call soon. It was cruel to worry her, but Maya couldn't risk telling the truth. Adults had spent her whole life making decisions for her, moving her around like a chess piece. This time she was making her own choice. The bus ride took 8 hours. Maya barely slept, her mind going over everything she knew about Harrison Blackwell, reviewing the melody from the USB drive again and again through her cheap earbuds. It was complex with unusual intervals and a rhythm that seemed to shift in unexpected ways. There had to be a meaning to it, another layer of the puzzle. She arrived at the nearest town to the coordinates around dawn. The Blackwell estate was another 5 miles out, according to her phone's map. Maya started walking, her backpack heavy on her shoulders. The early morning air was cold and she could see her breath forming clouds. The estate was bigger than she'd imagined. A massive mansion sat behind rusty iron gates, surrounded by gardens that had clearly been beautiful once but were now overgrown and wild. No trespassing signs were posted everywhere, and Maya could see a security company's stickers on some of the signs. The place had been abandoned but was still being monitored. She walked the perimeter looking for a way in. The front gates were locked with a chain and padlock. The walls around the property were high but not impossible to climb. Maya found a section where a tree had grown close enough to the wall that she could use its branches to get over. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She'd never broken into anywhere before, never committed any crime more serious than returning a library book late. But she thought about Harrison Blackwell's words. He'd chosen this path deliberately. He wanted someone determined enough, brave enough to find what he'd hidden. Maya climbed. Getting over the wall wasn't as hard as she'd feared. The tree was sturdy and she'd always been good at climbing. She dropped down on the other side, landing in thick grass, and froze, listening for any sound of alarms or security. Nothing, just the wind and birds. The mansion loomed ahead of her, gray stone covered in climbing ivy. Most of the windows were boarded up. Maya circled around to the back looking for an entrance. She found a basement window that had been broken at some point, probably by vandals or animals. The boards covering it were loose. She pulled them aside and squeezed through, dropping down into darkness. She turned on her phone's flashlight. The basement was filled with old furniture covered in sheets, boxes of books, and what looked like abandoned equipment from Harrison's various projects. Maya found a staircase and climbed up into the main house. The place was eerie in the dawn light filtering through cracks in the boarded windows. Dust covered everything. Her footsteps echoed on marble floors. She pulled out the paper with the coordinates and used her phone to navigate. The music room should be on the second floor, east wing. She found it behind a set of double doors. The room was large, with high ceilings and walls that had probably once been painted in bright colors, but were now faded and peeling. And there, arranged in a semicircle, were 5 instruments: a piano, a violin, a flute, a cello, and a harp. Each one looked expensive despite the dust covering them. Maya approached slowly, examining each instrument. They all had the same kind of cymbals she'd seen on the attic piano, but more of them and in different patterns. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures, documenting everything. That's when she heard it, the sound of footsteps coming from somewhere else in the house. Heavy boots on hardwood floors. Maya's blood turned to ice. Security? Police? She looked around frantically for a place to hide.